guys, thank you so much for being with me. You know, fun fact about my friends is that they love horror. I love horror, but I think in recent times I've realized that our definition of why we love horror might be a little different. Because here's the thing. I am a scaredy cat. I have enough self-respect to admit that. um, I think, one of my first, one of the first horror series that I watched when I was young, was the Insidious movies. And I haven't watched them in a long time, but I do know that I love them. And the reason was specifically because in the first movie, stuff happened, right? But if you watch the next movie, you'll see that the events during that movie was the stuff that happened, like the creepy stuff that happened in the first. That blew my mind when I was little. I still haven't rewatched it to this day, but I love it. I love horror as a genre because it's so artistic sometimes, especially like the old ones, the Japanese horror movies as well. Crazy. I absolutely love it. It's so scary. It's so impactful and stuff, and it's so nice. I love it so much. But my friends, they also appreciate like the artistic side of it, but I can't help but think that maybe they just appreciate horror, like in general, just to be scared. And I don't know, maybe it's different, but they just actively consume it, whereas I think I just like the idea and the visuals of it. I don't really, if I do consume it, I think it's through books and not necessarily through any visual mediums, because that is just, oh god, no, no, I am not gonna watch anything that scares me. To be fair, I recently watched like a horror movie. I don't remember its title, so I'm sorry about that. But it is about, I think it's set in the Irish or maybe one of the Celtic countries, is like countryside, and it's a forest, and they can't get out of the forest, and they realize that at night these creatures would come out and watch them through like the windows. And yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but these creatures are I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm just gonna say that these creatures are one of the creatures from the Celtic mythologies, and it's just a reimagining of it, and I love it. Like, it's a bizarre premise when I was first watching it, but then at the end, when everything sort of just gets tied in together, the story was told through exposition. I loved it because there's another layer of appreciation for it, basically. And yeah, that's what I love about horror. Sorry, putting this down. Yeah, that's one of the things I love about horror, is just horror has a second layer to it, where these horrors, these creatures are based of already pre-existing, often pre-existing like issues already. Some of them are from pre-existing creatures too, like La Yorn La Yorn La sorry La you know what I'm talking about. I'll probably write her name somewhere. Yeah, that one. Like, she already has an existing like premise already. Like, people who know her story already. So when they see her in the big screen, the characters have to give like an extra information for people who don't know of her backstory and stuff. So horror stories, specifically like horror movies, they are often from pre-existing stories already, just retold and stuff, because, you know, horror fans exist. And, you know, sometimes some horror stories are just for the sake of these fans anyway, like just for the sake of being a cult classic. And honestly, there are a different type of appreciation for those ones. But yeah, so I love when horror stories have an extra layer to them, because I appreciate them just a tiny bit better by doing so. Like people are like shit talking the, I wouldn't say the Amityville series, but is that what they're called, the Amityville series? It's like, but it's basically the sort of series of supernatural events that this couple go through. You know, some people don't believe them. That's not what this video is about. I'm not gonna say that it's real or not. My personal opinion is that hopefully it's not. But you know how it goes, because some exorcist stories, they're sort of like a genre within a genre within like horror, you know? And I'd say I'm more like iffy about those, because the origins of some exorcist stories is just about people who are like disadvantaged or have like mental illness being taken advantage of, you know? And yeah, that's a little bit of an iffy thing for me. So I try not to consume those anymore. Obviously there was a craze a few years back about like the Nun series. I forgot the title which that started. And even I think Insidious was based off of something. I love Insidious. It still freaks me out. That whole story, it freaks me out. But I have an appreciation for it, and I love it to this day. I can never watch it though. But yeah, so horror movies, you know, they have their own stories. I will say stuff like The Babadook and Midsommar and even Hereditary, right? They don't have pre-existing stories like Midsommar doesn't really have like a cult, like a literal, like the same cult from real life, right? But it's still based off of a real concept, a real thing, right? Which is cults, and Hereditary also cults actually. But what was the other one that I mentioned? I don't know why. I guess I was just so... Oh yeah, The Babadook. Some people say that The Babadook is a physical manifestation of post... What was it called? Postnatal depression? Is that the right natal? Is natal right? Sorry, but yeah, it's a representation of just like depression in general, and you know, that just adds, like I said, another layer to it. It's not just a horror movie anymore. It's not just a random ass story. It has, you know, it has significance now. And that's why when horror stories, they're obviously like written badly or something, I still can't necessarily hate them entirely, unless of course the layer, like I said, that makes them significant, or the impact of their story just mellows out, in which case then yeah, it's kind of a waste of time. But like I said, that's why I'm like so iffy with the exorcism genre, because most of the time the lesson or its significance just boils down to don't mess with things you don't know about. And yeah, that's why it's like horror games though, I have a very deep appreciation for some. When you think horror game, honestly, other than like really good ones, most people would probably point to the very big horror game like for the past decade, which is like FNAF. Actually, can I say something about that? Like, I know it's horror. It starts off as horror, but sorry about touching my hair a lot. It's just the camera's catching something with my hand and I'm not even moving it. Yeah, the thing about FNAF to me is that it's more sci-fi now than horror. Not with the new game, the Into the Pit game, that's really cool, but it's still sci-fi horror to me. But the first Five Nights at Freddy's game, it's definitely like just horror. I don't think there's the only sci-fi element really was just the animatronics, but even then it's barely like it's barely like a used, like it wasn't a big deal at that time, right? But recently, specifically the security breach one, it's not horror. It's a sci-fi story to me. It's just about like animatronics going haywire and some rabbit villain like Vanny screwing over these electronic characters. It's sci-fi. And people need to like distinguish the two now, because although I don't think it's like a serious problem that I'm raising, like, oh, people don't know horror to sci-fi, like that's not what I'm saying. I am saying though is that I love FNAF, Five Nights at Freddy's, when it was more about the supernatural side of things than the sci-fi stuff side of things, because now there's the distortion discs and I'm like, oh god, why are you explaining it? Because I guess like the plotline has become convoluted enough that some things need to be explained logically, like the reason why Gregory can see Vanny at all was apparently because of these discs. But I hate that. I hate that so much, because you have an explanation for it now and it's no longer scary. I don't know. Ever since I heard of those distortion discs, those illusion discs, sorry, absolutely hated them. Yeah. The Joy of Creation one, where the baby gets up and like you're gonna have to like pretend to sleep for some animatronics, and for one animatronic you have to open the windows and stuff. That's really cool. Now that's horror and stuff. Yeah, so what other horror games? The horror games that I like, the other horror game that I recently watched was Still Waking in the Deep. I think that's the title. Hang on. Still Wakes the Deep, I think is what it's called. Still Wakes the Deep is the Eldritch game that I recently watched, and now it's on my mind for a long time. And essentially it's a walking simulator. But hang on, okay? I have an opinion with walking simulators. I like games as a storytelling genre. It's obvious. It's perfect for it. And people don't like when the only gameplay feature is, say, just walking, right? You just press buttons you press buttons in a quick time event, but all you do is like traverse the setting and stuff, and you encounter creatures, you hide from creatures, you expose the story, you learn about like what's happening through like pages or like interacting with other characters. To some people, they hate it, and to some extent I would agree. But for some games, like there's always exceptions to it, like my opinion, I like walking games are fine, because sometimes visual novels are still considered games even though it's just a book with pictures, right? So I think walking sims, they're fine as long as it's a storytelling thing. It's fine, because you can't just have a game. Well, you can. I guess you can have a game without a story. But for some people who want to make a story with like a backstory in their game, then yeah, pages and reading is what you're gonna have to go through. And that's fine. The reason why I brought it up is because I believe that walking simulator games are fine if they have like an artistic vision they want to show and tell, like Still Wakes the Deep. Then there's Firewatch, which apparently it's just the ending that people have a problem with, so there's that. There's also another one which I thought about, which one was it? But yeah, basically some games are just walking simulators, but as long as they have a vision of sorts, the art is pretty, the story is engaging, that's fine with me, I think. Of course, some people just say, it isn't worth the price. So that's where I sort of understand that. Anyways, going back to horror games, the reason why I brought walking simulators up is because it's a good way to tell stories, and with Still Wakes the Deep, that oil rig story, I think it works perfectly well with the genre itself, especially with cosmic horror, because with cosmic horror, the visuals are important, especially when you're trying to convey like this otherworldly vibe, right? Like, even I noticed that the visual inspirations was like the movie Annihilation, because if you watch that movie, it's so pretty. The visuals, I mean, it's great. Actually, I wouldn't say it's a horror. There's only like 2 or 3 horrifying things in that movie, and it's all like body horror and stuff, and it's so good. Annihilation is a great movie, by the way. It's one of those great cosmic horror movies. In my opinion, it's cosmic horror. Yeah, so there's that. But in terms of the games, there's also just horror games that are there's, I think honestly mascot horror is a different genre, and I think people just understand what it is now, so I'm not gonna get into that. Um, one of my like the old games that I love so much in terms of like the horror genre are just JRPGs. The biggest one at the moment is like in my head is Corpse Party. Like so good, so good. The second one is Mad Father. That one, so good. There's also Eve and Yume Nikki. I think that's what you. Is that how you say it? Yume Nikki. And there's like I don't know if it's Eve by the way or like EB or ID. I don't know, but yeah, it's Eve. And then there's at the moment, I don't know if it's considered JRPG, but Fear and Hunger is really good. Fear and Hunger is so good. I love it so much. But yeah, those games really influential, I think, to me and my friends. I think that's why when they say they're a horror fanatic, I think it arises from those games specifically. But hey, I'm not my friends. I'd love for them to talk to me about it though, because they know more than me. I'm a normie when it comes to like the interests that my friends have, which is like anime. They know lots of things about Japan and its culture and horror. But I'm a noob when it comes to those things. I'm a complete normie, but I will say though, another reason why I love horror, to me specifically, is the characters. Yeah, specifically like the slasher characters. I know that I think that's why I was interested in Dead by Daylight when it came out. No longer. I'm not interested in it anymore, but I used to watch videos about it, and I'm more so interested with like the characters' like backstory and stuff. And I'll just use this as a quick segue to the creepypasta characters. I think that's the only fandom that I don't know. I was like, I think it all started with creepypasta story times, like when people would just read over them like audiobooks and stuff. I always listened to it and stuff. I think that sort of morphed into true crime podcasts like when I grew up. I don't listen to true crime anymore. I used to though, like, because like I said, it's sort of like YouTube essay videos, but instead it's like podcasts. So it was much more like helpful at the time. It was convenient, but now it's not. So I don't listen to those anymore. But before true crime, I was listening to people's to fictional horror stories. It's kind of depressing that I kind of moved from fictional stories to non-fictional horror stories, because non-fiction is real life and it's a whole other topic. But creepypasta, holy shit, dude. Yeah, so in the previous video I mentioned Jeff the Killer being my personal, the physical embodiment of what I fear, and he still is. Whenever my mind, whenever I actively want my mind to think of something creepy, it's someone staring at me. It's not necessarily a phobia of sorts, it's just I don't know, it makes me feel uncomfortable when people stare at such an intensity of sorts, because it conveys that they have some sort of a scheme, that they're scheming, they're little schemers. But yeah, I don't like being targeted. I don't like attention. Ew. And by attention, I mean like unwanted attention. You know, like when you're at a party and you're like nobody, you don't want anybody to talk to you. And then someone goes up to you and you're like started talking, you're like, oh god, please. Oh, no thank you. Of course that's different. I don't know, I guess it's just, maybe it's just like not irrational, it's just a fear of just being targeted by terrible people who want to do something terrible. You know? Or maybe it's just a woman thing. And I'm not saying that to be misogynistic, I mean that in a we are most likely to be targeted kind of way. So yeah, so there's that. But yeah, so Jeff the Killer, it's the eyes for me, where especially if they stare directly at me, it's that. But you know, the picture, the Jeff the Killer picture, it doesn't really freak me out. That isn't scary. But what is scary is other people's horror, specifically the horror fan art of him, okay? Because the real horror is the fan art that people made about him. Because I'm telling you guys, when I say there's a fandom for creepypasta, there is a fandom for creepypasta. But yeah, some art out there, so creepy, and I love it. Okay, but to me, it's more so. What actually scares me is just, say it's nighttime and you're walking, right? I said this in the previous video, but just imagine just a silhouette, right? Someone hooded with a white hoodie, right? Black pants is usually how he is being portrayed, and you know, suddenly, like while he's hooded, you know, you're just walking and stuff, he turns to you, and then you see this like mutilated face, right? This mutilated face, and he's staring directly at you, and obviously you're like quite far, so you think his smile is just so unnerving and unnatural. That to me is horror. I love it. And yeah, the thing is, you know, I wanted to make a character that embodied my fears, and I wanted to write like some sort of horror story, like maybe a short story. And while I was thinking about things that I fear the most, it all just came back to just a visual of Jeff the Killer. And that's why I say I'm not scared of Jeff the Killer, but I'm scared of what he represents, I guess. Like I was never really scared of creepypasta stories. To me, it's just another short story that I wanted to read when I was little. Like it's just that to me. So I never really like got into like engaging with the fandom all that much. To me, they're just characters with like stories that I can mold, because like technically these characters are, I wouldn't say like free for all. It's just the fandom has I don't know, it's my first fandom, so like the idea of just molding these character stories, because all of these creepypasta characters, they have backstories. The backstories are what the author presented, okay, and they don't have a story afterward. So this fandom was free to just make a story of their life after the incidents, after their creepypasta like pages and stuff. And so you have a free-for-all of characters that don't have endings, and you can give them an ending. And most of the time it's with the other killers, it's with other characters mentioned in the fandom, and they're all living in a mansion. That was the idea. And like as a as a storyteller. That's so good, so good. Cause you can give them any story you want. I think in this fandom, I think, you know, you can. Oh, sorry. I think the general unspoken consensus is that if you want your character, if you want your original character to be used by others, the only thing you need to make is really one, they're like, what kind of character they are. Are they like a ghost, a human, just like a killer or something, you know? And you just need to make their backstory, and then bam, other people can interpret their story afterwards. And I think that's the beauty of it. That's generally why I loved reading lots of like works from that fandom. Obviously, there's also the whole like just issue where it's all at least at the time when I was in it, it's just people being edgy. And by edgy, I don't mean fucking racist humor, okay? I just mean actually dark. Because when people say dark humor, okay, when I was little, it's about stuff like death and, I don't know, stabby, right? But now, dark humor is just freaking people being mean and saying, it's just a joke, bro. It's not, okay? Like, we had standards back then. And the standards being just straight up being about, I don't know, murder and shit. It's not good. It's not good. But that's dark humor. That's not fucking edgy humor, okay? Fuck's sake. Cause I know what edgy fucking dark humor is. And like kids nowadays, whatever, like racist humor is not being edgy, okay? You fucking sorry. Sorry. But yeah, edgy humor is not the same as when I was in the fucking fandom. It was different back then. It was so... It's crazy. Honestly, like looking back, it's crazy. I wouldn't say it's cringe, okay? It was a phase, but like I used to like regret it, but I don't, okay? It was a phase, you know, it's part of my life now, and I can't deny the younger me that it happened, okay? I think at that time though, because it's dark, and here's the thing about horror enthusiasts, I'm not like speaking on behalf of other people. I think creepypasta and other horror tales and the fact that it's all dark humor and edgy and shit, I think it's just a coping mechanism for people to express like things that they were dealing with at the time. And also like a reason why I mentioned like the Babadook is because that creature is meant to represent depression, specifically postnatal depression, right? Well, these stories from like creepypasta writers, they, you know, some people say, oh my god, you're just being edgy, you're just a teen, you just want attention and shit, right? And you know, at like a point I agree, but it's not because of something shallow. I think some people just want to cope in a way that's healthy. And by cope, I like they're not writing these terrible stories because they want to hurt others. They're doing it as a way to, you know, express some sort of like feeling, you know. They like because some people, right, they when they're coping, they use an art form of sorts. Like some people paint, some people write, some people I don't know, go to the rage rooms and stuff when they're going through something. for people to write dark stories, it means that they're just going through something. And you know, you can never know, because you're not entitled to anyone's like backstory. You're not entitled to anyone's like personal life, like their information. But so these horror stories, specifically the ones that aren't, you know, made by a corporation and stuff, these are stories that are these are coming from people who want to say something. These are coming from people who have gone through something, and they are expressing these fears, these issues, by making it tangible, by making a monster, by making something, just making their life make sense, you know? Because, say the Babadook, right? Wouldn't you say it's easier for a monster to just linger around you and cause all these problems than to accept the fact that it's my mind and I don't know how to cope with it, and it's a hard topic? Because that's what, like, you know, that's what mental illness is. It's just, it's something hard to fight, you know? And you know, when I like joined like the creepypasta fandom, I was going through some shit, you know? And like I said, it wasn't me being edgy. It wasn't me being like I'd say, you know, dark for the sake of just being dark and being edgy. It's just, at the time, I was going through things that I couldn't keep up with. Like, I moved from place to place a lot and stuff, and all I wanted to do was just read stuff from the internet, you know, just stories, whether it be horror stories or anything. And I loved reading at the time. That's why I enjoyed horror stories, and that's why I enjoyed listening to people like making an audiobook about these horror stories and stuff. And that's the beauty of horror. It's a way for people to create a story without, because horror can elicit very specific feelings, you know? And for people who have trauma and they want to get their story out in a way that's healthy, I guess, in a way that's that won't trigger themselves or others, then they create these stories that will elicit similar feelings, just to I guess share it, just to share that feeling, just to share that information, I guess. And yeah, that's the thing about horror. Like I said, it elicits feelings, specifically feelings of like fear, anger, you know, it causes you to like your fight or flight and stuff. It's a very great medium, and that's why I love it and stuff. But the reason why I brought that up is not just because, you know, I'm trying to explain horror to you. I think there's something beautiful to it, and that's what I want to bring up. You know, not to be poetic, I just want to mention this. I don't know if it's real, but this is poetic to me. There is a video I watched of someone explaining that crows, while they look black to us, okay, that they're just like plain dark purple or dark blue, black, right? Crows are black. They may look black to us, but to other animals who can see through different like spectrums of color that we can't, right? Because like dogs can only see, I think it was red and green, and cats can see something different. but basically every animal sees things differently from us, right? Well, crows are actually very colorful to them, to other creatures. We just can't see it. We can't see it with our limited senses and stuff. But they can, and they can see how beautiful crows are. Crows, they used to, or at least in a way, they still have a very dark stereotype of being surrounded or surrounding death, and I don't know if it's ravens or crows. I think it's crows, but they eventually at one point became like a harbinger of death itself, and lots of media portray them as a very dark creature. But then they're actually colorful. We just don't know it. They're actually beautiful and vibrant, like a parrot of sorts, but we just don't see it. And yet we vilify them and say they're dark creatures, So, yeah. I just think that dark things are often beautiful if you just keep looking underneath it. And that's the thing about any art medium, any artistic medium, is just as long as you find meaning in it, it's not just gonna be another cash grab anymore to you. It's gonna be beautiful. And that's horror, I think. Hang on. So, yeah. I think this is the perfect time to give you guys a question. Your favorite horror movie, if you have one. If you don't have one, think of something that just disturbs you, okay? And I want you to make a meaning out of it, okay? I want you to think, say, thalassophobia, right? The fear of deep waters, right? While it is scary, don't you think that it's also kind of beautiful? And I'm speaking of someone who doesn't have thalassophobia. I think the ocean being deep is so beautiful. It's like the complete opposite to our space, to celestial bodies. It's so... Anyways, think about your fear, and I want you to take a step back and think, isn't it pretty? Except for trypophobia. No, nothing's pretty about trypophobia. Fucking holes and creatures in it. Ooh, God, no, no thanks. Yeah, maybe not phobias, just maybe anything that scares you in general. Well, horror. It's so nice. Okay. What is your favorite genre, and can you turn it into a horror thing? Like sci-fi horror, how FNAF is made of animatronics and stuff. Maybe you can join two together, like fantasy horror, which I'd say is, would you say zombies are fantasy horror? Anyways, yeah, so think about the most funky, most random, most out there genre and merge it with horror. Is that interesting? That's the question that I'm gonna leave with you tonight, so let's hop onto the bed and sleep now, because you need to sleep and I also will sleep. Sorry. Okay, see you tomorrow. And yeah, good night.